Hi. Today I want to have a slightly hard conversation because I think we've got some very important things really confused. And this is regarding standards. People confuse control with standards and intuition with truth all the time. We see it everywhere. Most people don't have standards. They have control mechanisms disguised as standards, but standards don't control other people. They determine access to you. And there are some very important systems within us that help guide and regulate this. Discernment isn't about judging other people. It's about governing ourselves. Our brain is constantly scanning and filtering for safety, pattern, and outcome. If you don't consciously and consistently guide this, your past is going to. Because that is what it is designed to do, is to reinforce your identity based on what it is known and the habits that have formed. So there's an input layer to all of this, which is formulated by instinct, which is your safety check. It is the animal within each of us. The intuition, which is our trajectory check, right? That's our goals, visions. This is the seer aspect, the ability to determine what is aligned with how you feel and what you value. And then there's the logic center, which is our probability check. This is our architect, the one that has the ability to shape our perception based upon our instincts and intuition. Instincts inform, is it safe, stable, secure? And stability is more about consistency in behavior. But it has a limitation because it is biased on the past. It can just be your trauma repeating in a loop speaking to you unless you consciously re-inform it. Intuition informs if it is aligned with your desires, your goals, your internal truth of value that are aimed at growth. But it has a limitation, which is desire protection. It's where our deepest desires constrain us, because intuition can be fantasy. Logic informs the behavioral output needs based on pattern, your progress, your capacity, the data that you are receiving, your expansion and identity formation. But its limitation is that it can rationalize your emotional bias, can be justification. So the step that most of us are missing is the calibration check. The calibration check is the regulation layer. So we have the input layer, which is instinct, intuition, and logic. The regulation layer is the calibration. And that is where we ask ourselves if the signal we are receiving is trustworthy or not. Is it trustworthy? Is my logic justifying my behaviors? Is my intuition focused on fantasy? Is my instinct running off of my trauma scripts? Without asking ourselves this question, our standards cannot hold ground because we are still aligning with past patterns. That calibration layer is where the change occurs. It is where we choose access. It is where we choose where our attention is going and where it should go, and we reframe it, redirect it, reshape it. It isn't something we rush into. It isn't something that we allow urgency to distract us from. It is where we question our own thinking. This is where metacognition happens. It is where the behavior change occurs, where we take control of the weather within our own minds. And instead of feeding doubt and fear and insecurity, we start being solution focused, curious, because not everything is for us, or we wouldn't need discernment. It is where we intentionally choose opportunities based on whether the probability that our logic raises is trustworthy or not. So that regulation layer is where our nervous system learns to gauge and respond safely, in alignment, and based on good data. And then this leads to the selection layer where our discernment can choose where our attention goes, because this is all about our attention. Our attention is the currency. And without these safeguards in place, our attention goes where the peaks are, where the dopamine hits are, where the intensity is. So after we are able to calibrate and use our discernment in the selection layer, where we choose our response, then comes the boundary layer. And this is where our standards occur. The boundary layer is where we determine what has access to our presence and our attention. If you don't like what you are seeing, if it isn't leading you to growth, because not liking it isn't enough. There are lots of things that are really, really good for us, like choosing a healthier diet over junk food that we don't necessarily like because the junk food tastes better. So that boundary layer, those standards, are choosing what is good fuel for my body in this example over what is just meeting that intensity, that flavor peak. And then we get to the reinforcement layer after the boundary layer. And this is where our attention either grows or starves our patterns. Most people are missing the calibration stage. And without that calibration stage, your standards cannot stand because your discernment isn't trustworthy. And then you end up propagating control mechanisms where instead of implementing self-control through calibration and determination and discernment, not determination, that's part of it, but that's logic. Through calibration and discernment, that's self-control. We project the control outwards and we set boundaries that attempt to get other people to behave the way we want them to, when the change that needs to occur is within ourselves. It's exhausting to our nervous system to try to control things external to it. And that is why we are all so tired, is because we are disguising control mechanisms and calling them standards. Because we are outsourcing our values. We are outsourcing our instinct, intuition, and logic to messages from unguided, unfiltered attention. So the reinforcement layer comes at the end. Everything is not in your favor, but everything is usable. If you can't tell the difference, you will stay in patterns that you should have outgrown. You prevent and block and blind your own emotional maturity. This is what leads us to the Peter Pan syndromes that we see with people where they are still living in their childhood wounds, over identifying with healing. So we're not broken, a little misguided, but not broken. We have tools we haven't learned how to use, and behavior changes that we are afraid to do because of fear of loss of belonging, lack of resource and support. You start using these layers of your existence correctly, you can eliminate a great deal of that. So we have input layer, regulation layer, selection layer, boundary layer, and the reinforcement layer. And when all of those layers are flowing in alignment with what leads to your growth and your greatest good and highest potential, your experience of suffering reduces. Your thresholds increase. Your capacity increases. You expand. And instead of seeing a world bent against you, you begin to see your own worth within it. You get to choose at that point. So you don't need better intuition. You need better calibration of what you trust. Don't make it free. Be the change within yourself that you want to see in the world. You must be. Because you are the center of your universe. You are the compression point where everything that exists in your field of awareness gets filtered. You have to start trusting your filter, cleaning out your filter, questioning whether it is functioning properly, adjusting it. That's calibration. And then moving in accordance. It's time to move. Avoidance and delay are not going to serve us anymore. It is time to move. It is time to make those behavioral changes that you have been putting off and avoiding. Because the pattern doesn't end until you choose to end it. That's all I've got. I love you.